that ship! Blast them!
Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to our very first episode of Armor Party, a show celebrating the costumes and costumers of the Star Wars saga. I am your host, Mike Forster, and before we kick things off, I wanted to give you a little insight into what this show will be about. To give you some background on myself, I've been a Star Wars costumer for the past few years, and it's changed my life completely. I've met some incredible people with even cooler backgrounds during my time in the clubs, and wanted an outlet to not only let them tell their stories, but hopefully inspire more people to further their fandom and build their own costume. We're going to dive into how-tos, discuss details of equipment, paints, priming, tips, tricks, tales of legendary troops, and you'll hear this all from the costumers themselves. If you've considered making your own costume but felt a little lost trying to get started, this is the show for you. If you're already a costumer and want to hear more from others within this huge community, Armor Party will also entertain. Thanks for listening, and I think it's time we get started, right? It's May the 4th, and I couldn't think of a better person to talk to than one of the first approved Bad Batch members himself. He's got one of the greatest Instagrams to follow if you're a costumer. I'm so excited to have him as my first guest on the show. He goes by Alpha Ignition online, but I know him as John Rodriguez. John, welcome to the Armor Party.
Hello, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Man, I'm excited. I think when we originally connected on social, I know that cosplayers always have a relationship with photographers in some way or the other. And I remember your photography that I think it's Mark Edwards shoots for you mostly was like, damn, this is well done. You're insanely talented in terms of doing it from the ground up, from 3D printing all the way to finishing. I love your stuff, and it's been fun for us to be able to connect. And I know that like our humor is the same, and I'm like, man, I gotta get you on the show, man. So how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. Thank you for that. I'm doing great. Just to add to that, Mark is usually the first guy I call. He's also a huge Star Wars fan, and he's actually in the 501st too. So I'm sure you know. I'm
geeked we're able to connect, and I'm geeked we're able to talk about this because I know that you and I have joked about not having enough time, not having enough money, being able to figure out what we want to spend all our energy on. And it's really cool to see how hard you get after it in terms of just making stuff. I think that's really important because I look at other people and I think, man, sometimes it can be hard to say, I got stuck in a spot and I'm leaving it, but you just power through it, man. It's really inspiring to see.
Oh, well, I appreciate that. More now than ever, I have almost no time because I've got an almost 2-year-old and I work too. I don't do this all day.
Yet.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, but I have like 20 or 30-minute spurts, throughout the day where I can go and just give it hell. Because if I go light and I just look at it and go, I'm never gonna get anything done. So in that time, I'm like, all right. Like I tell my wife too. Sometimes I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go in the garage, give me 30 minutes. Let me just focus on this real quick, and then I'll come and do whatever the hell you want.
Yep, I know that. So
I'll go and.
I know that struggle, man. I totally know it. So, John, let's get a little bit of frame of reference. So, you're in Southern California.
Yes, I'm in Los Angeles.
And you're a member of a few of the costuming clubs, right? You're 501st Rebel Legion and Mandalorian Mercs.
Yeah, 501st Rebel Legion, Mando Mercs, and also Saber Guild. Which was actually the first group I joined. They were the first, and then I was like, "Ooh, there's more." Joined the rest.
And we can clearly see where that went from there.
Yeah.
So let's go all the way back to the beginning, man. I've got to know, because the point of the podcast, and obviously this is early enough in the show where I'm trying to kind of uncover really what got people started on down this rabbit hole, man. And it's deep and it's nerdy. And I would love to know, like, what's kind of your Star Wars story, man? Like, what is your first memory? Like, what is it about Star Wars that you remember that set your hooks?
Yeah. One of my earliest childhood memories of watching Star Wars was I had a best friend that lived on the same block. I think we were 7 or 8, and he'd either come over or I'd go to his apartment. We both lived on the same street, so we'd like, yo, coming over, whatever, bring toys, whatever, and we'd play in his apartment complex. He had a 2 or 3 story apartment, like a garage and 2 stories, and we'd run around the complex pretending it was a Death Star, and he was Luke or I was Luke, Han and Luke running around, and we had I don't even know, I don't remember if we had blasters or not. We had something, we'd run around and make noise, and neighbors would complain, and that was the youngest, the earliest memories I have of it. Just having a lot of fun pretending to be, I guess, in the movie.
The funny part, because I know you and I are both in our mid-ish 30s, right? We're spring chickens. And I'm sure that you're like me when you were growing up. Star Wars merchandise and even the toys for kids is so much more complex, and like the stuff they have for kids now,
right?
In some ways, almost, yeah. That's what I mean. Like I remember growing up, and there was basically a flashlight, and it had big D-cell batteries in it, and it had the little extender tube, and I used to have to color with Sharpie over the lens to color the lightsaber because it was just white. Like they didn't have colored extenders for these things, and now they have like.
You're lucky though.
Why?
Well, you're lucky though. I had a mag light with a piece of blue film that I don't even know where it came from, because I didn't buy it. I don't know where it came from. We had blue film. We taped that right over the flashlight, and there was no light. It was just a blue light that would shine on the ceiling, and that was my lightsaber. And my sister had a pink one or something, a red one.
So you're like, but it's like something to be said for like the imagination I feel like we had growing up. Your mom would wrap the presents, and then, after the paper was gone, the wrapping paper was gone, it's like, oh, I got this like 3.5 foot tube, man. I'm coloring this thing with, Sharpies, and this is my new lightsaber. And it's not to say that yeah, right. I need this. This is my lights, and like wearing like a
like, don't throw away the
a
packaging.
Black turtleneck with like black pants so that you were Luke in Return of the Jedi.
Thank you for
right. Yeah, man. So it's not to obviously say that kids today don't have imaginations, and I sound like such a like boomer as I'm like talking about it. But it's so much. The merchandising, Star Wars as a brand, is so much different now, obviously, and they've recognized all the different facets you can make money on. So I feel like we were in the sweet spot of them testing the waters with with a new clientele, new customers.
We got a lot of cool stuff. Like I'm thinking of the generation before us that got the more simpler toys, very little articulation, very, much simpler molds, and then we got something pretty good. I was in the Power of the Force 2 group where they were like buff Luke, and, everyone was kind of buff, and it was like, and it was like, okay, like they didn't even fit well into the vehicles and stuff. But then now the kids now, which I guess I still feel like I'm, I haven't transitioned into an adult. I'm still floating in adolescence, but the kids now have the coolest toys ever, where the you can swap the hands, you can the ankles roll, like everything, the knees bend in 2 places. It's like, these are the best toys ever, and I don't think they can get much better than this.
Right.
With the Hot Toys and the Black Series and all that, it's just like,
right.
I don't have room for it now. I have a little room, but I don't have much room for it now. So I'm trying to limit what I get in that category. But they're so cool.
It's good for
way cool.
It's good for kids to have playability. It's horrible for our wallets, though. I have to definitely say
it's bad for the adults that are still stuck in that mode.
It really is, man. So, all right. So let's kind of get into the part, of course, of where our listeners are going to be really into, which is obviously the costuming part of it. Our imaginations are strong and wild as kids. As you start to get into an adult, you're like, man, I kind of want to start doing this for real. Like, what was your introduction into costuming, and when you started to kind of take it, I don't know, I guess a little serious?
So I don't know where it was. This is the costuming thing for me is sort of new. When I was a teenager, I was skateboarding or playing sports, and I still love Star Wars, and I had the figures, I think, still growing up. But and then I played music and stuff. So then it was all that, and then later on, I discovered you could buy lightsabers. That was the first intro to me. I saw like an Ultra Saber ad somewhere, and I was like, wait a minute, like, because I knew about
Yeah.
the master replica sabers. I had one of those since I was not a kid, but I had that from like 10 years before, and I was like, or 50, I don't even know how long ago. I saw that you can have some that you can like actually hit around, and you can swap the blades out, put it on your belt, whatever. I was like, oh my god, like this is insane. So my wife bought me one for I think it was my birthday, and I got her one, and we both had them, and we're like, yeah, these are fun, whatever. What happened? My intro to costuming was I was leaving the apartment I was renting here where I live, and someone that came to check out my apartment was at the time was the global director of Saber Guild,
Oh
and I
man.
had like yeah, it was like what. Well, I didn't know what it was at the time, and I had a little shrine, like the two sabers and like my Luke saber or whatever, and he's like, "Oh, you like lightsabers, you know?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he's like, "Let me see one." And he like started going crazy and twirling it, and I was like, "What? Like what is this? Like, is this real?" And he's like, "Well, whatever." He gave me all the info. He's like, "Come if you want." There was a temple close by, so I've been there for 5 almost 5 years now.
It was like Din Djarin watching Luke just slice through those dark
Yeah.
troopers, and you're like, "This is a real Jedi!" Oh my
Yeah, I was
gosh!
like, "Are you a Jedi?" Yeah, exactly.
I love that, man. I love that. Okay, so Jedi, almost like the Jedi costuming, the lightsabers was kind of your gateway into it. And then
Yeah.
where did the rest of the, you look at Galaxy's Edge and you look at what seems to be most of kind of an intro costume for a lot of people is a Jedi costume, because, there's a couple of people who make higher quality versions, but like you can go to Galaxy's Edge and buy a pretty good looking tunic, And so what was as far as like hard armor goes, which is obviously a little bit more of fine tuned to your body. What was that first one for you?
So my first intro to build, so I had bought a costume first that was already armored, but it was built by someone else. It was my first order TIE pilot that I still have. I love that costume. I bought it secondhand from a friend, happened to be my size. So I was like, perfect, let's do it. So that was my first experience actually wearing armor, and it wasn't much because the TIE has half or a quarter of what normal troopers are.
Right.
So I was like, oh, this is cool, and I had become friends with a bunch of clones at the time. The guy who sold me the costume was a clone trooper, and he had there was a group of friends that were all clone troopers. And I was like, oh, I'd love to do a clone trooper costume. I'm going to try to buy a kit when I can next time. And I did. And they all helped me, put it together, because I had no idea what I was doing. I'd never built a kit before. So I was like, big box of plastic. What do I do? So I'd go to one of the guys' house, and they'd all be there, like hanging out, and they're all doing their armor, and they'd show me like, oh, cut here, don't cut that, and it's like, okay, cool, remember that,
John,
oops, I cut it out.
Did you go to an armor party?
Yeah, I did.
Nice. Sorry, I had to plug my own show there for a second.
I didn't even realize.
So let me ask you this. So the kind of going in, okay, so your wife buys you these lightsabers, and then what was kind of the justification for kind of like explaining to your spouse? Because I did the same thing, right? So I told my wife, I'm like,
I have a one-word answer.
Okay, what is this?
It's charity.
Yes. Pull those heartstrings,
right?
Baby. Pull those heartstrings. So
yeah. And I've taken her to events, so she's like, okay, I get it,
Because it's the funniest part, I think, is like when I told my wife, I'm like, I think I want to buy a Star Wars costume. Like, I want to do this. And, in her head, she's like, oh, you want to buy like the deluxe costume from like, Party City or something? Like, what do you mean?
You're like, yeah.
And I'm like, no, I'm going to like buy this costume that's for real. Like, I'm going to look right out of the movie. And when you drop the knowledge of being like, well, this is a real thing. I mean, you're talking, I've never seen anyone not spend at least the cheapest kit I believe you can get is probably about $350 for probably like a TIE Reserve, right? With the boots and the belt and the,
Sure.
So my first build personally was a Scout Trooper, and my wife is like, how much are you going to spend on this? And I'm like, I think I'm like $1,000 in on it. You know what I mean? Which is
right.
Crazy to any normal person who's like, wait, you're not going to wear it every day? Like what? So what was that like rationality for you? How did you kind of rationalize it in your mind?
Well, it was a huge purchase because the thing was, I had bought that tie previously, in a short amount of time between buying the clone kit. So, and I'd spend a chunk of money on that tie because it was finished. It was
Right.
a finished
Right.
costume. So, finished
A little
costumes
bit
aren't
more.
cheap.
Yeah.
So that was the first intro. I was like, ooh, that was a hard hit. And I didn't, not that I didn't lie or anything, but I didn't tell her exactly what it cost. It was just like, it was, it was a little more than usual, a little more than it should have been, whatever. But it was fine. Like, we didn't talk about it much. But when I bought the clone kit,
Yeah.
she was like, what is this huge box? And I'm like, oh, it's my new armor, and she's like, how much did that cost? And I was like, oh, and so I had to, tell her it cost this much, but and she's like, but it's not even put together. Yeah, yeah. She was like, but you just spent this on that costume, and that one's finished, and this cost almost the same, and it's not even. It's in a
Yeah.
And I had to explain, like, no, they're built to your specifications. You have to cut everything down to size.
Right.
It's like, this is actually how you'd prefer it. Whatever. She couldn't wrap her head around it, and she was probably a little upset for a while, but she got around to it because I've gotten a little worse since then. So.
You've gotten a lot worse. I'll agree with your wife on that. Hopefully she listens to the podcast, and I can tell her that you've gone off the deep end. But I think like I think what's funny about it is, you look at this thing, and I've always kind of said it to people when they look at just the cost, because I'm sure we're gonna have people who are gonna listen that are gonna go, man, I'm having a real hard time rationalizing the concept of saying, I'm going to pay how much money for what? Like, I'm just paying hundreds of dollars for a sidearm on, that's not even like the big right. gun. You know what I mean? And I always kind of tell people, I'm like, what happens is you grow up and you realize that being an adult is boring. Right? Like, it's just boring. Yeah. Right. And so, and whether it's like you're spending money on mountain bikes or like, I'm not a Vegas guy, right? But some of my friends will go to Vegas and spend $3,000 on a couple days at the pool. And, and I'm like, man, we spend adult money however you want. And I'm just choosing to do it in something that I love that, like you said, allows for me to kind of interact with my community in a fun way. And also, like, this sub community of costumers makes it really fun,
Yeah. Well, it's a balance between selfless and selfish, because obviously there's a side that goes to the community. You want to high five kids. I love it. I love when kids geek out.
Yeah.
I live vicariously through them, because when I was little, we didn't have that. Or, you couldn't
right.
go to a swap meet or an event or whatever and see Darth Vader and a troop, a bunch of stormtroopers walking. That didn't exist. Or maybe it did
right.
for once or twice, whatever, like we didn't,
sure.
I'd never experienced that before. And
right.
not only that, but you want to be that, as a kid, especially, but as an adult, you're like, I fit into that now. Like I'm that size now, whatever.
Right.
Anything to fit into that mentally. Also, it's the most fun thing ever. Like it's addicting. And what you were saying, like, to justify the price, it's a huge commitment. It's not something you can be fickle with. You can't be like, I bought it and then have buyer's remorse. Like, ooh, like I don't want this anymore. Like, you have to really, dive in head first and be immersed in it, and also have the community around you to be able to help you. Because that's also important. If you do something by yourself, you're going to have a hard time. But if you have a bunch of support and people that have done it before, and especially with like Instagram, you can reach out and it's like, hey guys, I'm having an issue with this. You have 20 replies saying, try this, or, here's a link to that, or, it's awesome. So now is a good time to do all of that if you can.
Yeah. And I feel like,
before.
Exactly. And I feel like we've never been, this community, I think, is also rationalizing. Star Wars is in such a weird spot right now where it's almost like you're more nerdy for not liking Star Wars at this point. Right? Like, it's such a global phenomenon, especially with shows like The Mandalorian that are kind of aiming at bringing some like casual fans into the fold, right? Like, you don't have to, like, I don't know many people that aren't hardcore fans that watch the Clone Wars, but I know a ton of people who are really into The Mandalorian, and like they can recognize like, oh man, that's the guy with the silver helmet. That's Din, and it's really cool to kind of see people who were on the fence about Star Wars because the lore was so big and heavy and to have it reintroduced to them in a completely independent story. So you didn't have to feel the weight of Rey and Kylo Ren and all these people who are attached to the original trilogy. It's introducing a new set of fans, and I'm kind of seeing that at least when I'm talking about Star Wars with other people, because you're probably like the Star Wars guy for some of your friends, and I'm the Star Wars guy for some of my friends, and the sounding board, So it's been really cool, and like for you put these costumes on, and like you said, you go out, you high five kids, you do stuff like what. And you kind of sold your wife on it as a charity thing, which I love.
It's true also.
Because it's truly one of the most rewarding. Yeah. It's truly one of the most rewarding parts of this thing and this organization. Like, do you have any troops specifically that you're like, man, this moment stuck with me because I feel like every time you put the armor on in some way, there's a great story that comes out of it.
I mean, all of the troops are usually the same in that aspect because there's no kid that doesn't geek out. Like they know in advance that something Star Wars is happening, or maybe they might know that Darth Vader's coming, or people are coming, or they don't, or they know nothing. They always geek out, and even parades where you're walking down the street and it's like families, and there's like the kids are like what, and you walk straight up to them and they're like oh my goodness, and you high five them and they freak out. Like it happens every time, and it's never. It doesn't get old. It's like I don't know how to explain it. It's just amazing. It's like it's a great feeling because like I said, I live vicariously through them, so I see the reactions and I react the same way inside. I'm like yes, like I love this. So that's how
it's almost like you're authentically seeing that almost like what do I usually say this term a lot, the suspension of disbelief.
Yeah, they think you're the actual character.
Right. And that's been something that I've really noticed too, because I know that you costume a couple other properties too, but I think like there's something to be said specifically about Star Wars in that, if you see a guy with like a killer Thor kit, and it's not putting down Marvel cosplayers at all because like they're incredible, but like if you don't look like Chris Hemsworth, some people have a harder time being like, oh, that's a guy in a killer Thor suit. But when you have the helmet on, they don't know that you're not the guy. You know what I mean? And I think and for kids to see that, they're like, that's Darth Vader. They don't say that's a guy in a Darth Vader costume. They say that's Darth Vader.
Right. And I'll give you an example. Actually, I did a photo shoot this past weekend. And where we shot, it's kind of like a trail. So there's people running and walking. There's people walking their dogs, families with kids. And my buddy and I were both in our full Mandalorian costumes. And kids, families with kids walked up and they were same exact thing. They geeked out. They were like, what? And they were super shy to talk to us. So the parents were like, can we get a photo? And we're like, absolutely, come on over. Perfect. and they were like, are you guys from the show? And we're like, who knows,
sure.
Can't say whatever, just to not say no, I didn't want to be like, oh, you're just guys in costumes. Like, no, like, we're working on something, whatever. And they were like, wow.
It's California, baby. It's California. You never
Hollywood,
know.
Whatever. For 5 minutes from Hollywood. No, but, they think you are the person. Even if I'm not Din Djarin, obviously I have my own character, but
sure.
They're like, are you from the show? And you're like,
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, buddy.
Perfect. Like no, but thank you for thinking that.
Right.
They think
so cool.
You're it. So yeah.
So and then kind of more specifically into getting some of the meat and potatoes of what it is that you do, John. I mean, did your Facebook is probably your Instagram is probably one of the most helpful Instagrams I've come across since I've got into this, just because you're so willing to share when things go wrong. And I feel like part of like wrestling like with tech. Well, but it's awesome because I feel like when I joined the 501st and I started putting these costumes together, and I was like, in my head, I'm like, does everybody who's into this hobby, like, did they all used to work at auto body shops? Like, how does everybody know how to do this? I know.
Yeah.
So like, I think it's really cool that even though you're clearly a seasoned costumer, that you share when things go wrong. And like, so how was that? Like, what was the hurdles that you kind of got over to be like, okay, I feel like I've got a handle on this now.
Well, I don't consider myself, I'm a novice still. I'm an amateur at best. I'm trying to get better each day. What I do is I'll buy a helmet, paint it, sell it, and buy another helmet, paint it, sell it, just to practice.
Sure, sure.
But one thing that I like you're saying right now, like how is everyone so good and everything is pristine and everyone messes up, And what I didn't like was that, I mean, people can do whatever they want, but everyone would post stuff finished all the time, or like, I got this kit, and then the next picture is a finished thing, and it's like, well, what'd you do in between, or what happened, or like, did you mess
Magic.
up, like, and yeah, it's just they snap their fingers and a ding, they're wearing the thing, and it's like, I don't show everything, but I'll show when something goes wrong. This print didn't come out right, or I messed up on something, or like that's part of it, because a lot of people need to see that, because a lot of people will fail at something and be like, I suck, I'm not doing this anymore, and it's like, no, keep going. Like everyone messes up. Like I said, I'm not the best at anything. I dabble in a little bit of everything, but you mess up, just go again, or whenever you can. If it's something expensive, damn, okay, save up, whatever, or find it used, whatever. But if it's something you can do, don't let it, weigh you down. Try again. Give it a day if you need a breather. But I like showing that you can mess up, keep going, and it's not all perfect. It's not a pristine
For
thing
sure.
every time.
Do you feel like you've, and something that I think is awesome, because we've joked about this, is like, because I'm probably like 75% done with this Dinjarin build. And this paint, man, I've never airbrushed before. The paint has to be pristine, because it's supposed to look like it's this like cold cast Beskar that has to be a perfect. And it's like, man, I live in northern Michigan. I can't paint for 7 months out of the year. It's been killing me. And I love that you kind of like, you have just a opinion of like, yo, this is a $4 rattle can from Home Depot. You don't need the automotive shop to still get, because you post your finished product, and it's like, dude, that looks awesome. Like, who's going to disagree with that?
But hold on, but that's not a diss on the good stuff. I
agree.
Cheap. Like I'm sure if I had it and I painted with it, I'd never go back or whatever. But I can't justify buying an 8-ounce can for $70 or $80 or whatever. I can get a small can of spray paint for $12, and it won't be the same, and the quality will not be the same, but it'll give you the same vibe. And if you don't put them next to each other, it still looks amazing, Right. And even if they're next to each other, it looks fine. But I try to find a way around it. I don't airbrush much. You're just talking about airbrushing. I use rattle cans for almost everything.
Yeah. And I agree. I think because I'm using Alumoluster, and for people who are listening, that's the official paint that was used from a company called Imperial Surface, and their like specialty is all of these like high-end movie quality coatings and paints, and it's professional grade, and so it's very expensive, and it requires some pretty professional grade tools. And when you see someone who uses them, it's incredible to watch. And I'm so appreciative of watching professionals use it, because it works exactly like it should. But like, if you're like getting into painting like I am, I think what is encouraging for people who follow along with you is that you kind of get to see that transition from being like, well, here's where the base is going to go, and here's where you can improve. And if you want to go to that next level, then you'll get there. But don't let the fact that, you don't have the $500 paint setup deter you from making a badass costume, and I think that's important to remember too.
Totally. I'm like I said, I don't have a lot of space to work with, and I try to keep the machinery to a low. I do have a few 3D printers, but that's all like grouped in a place. It does, it's all there. But I prefer rattle cans. They're easy. I paint outside. Pop it on a traffic cone, and I do have a little mini airbrush thing. It's like a little battery setup thing, and I just use that for a little bit of weathering sometimes, just for like little cracks, little things. But I hardly use it. It's a lot of cleanup. It's kind of a pain to use.
Sure. Yeah. And you can't swap colors as fast. Like that's a huge thing.
I guess there is a way to do it. You can like swap. There's like a station I can buy. I don't want to buy all that stuff. It's like there's so much. I'm sure I'm going to have to eventually, but
Right. Well, we'll see if we can.
yeah.
They'll sponsor the podcast. We'll see if we can get you hooked up. So speaking of which, what do you, so you've got a couple 3D printers. If you've been following along with what you've been doing, you're getting into the resin printing stuff. I mean, for people who are listening that are kind of on the fence between saying, because I was laughing about this with somebody where 3D printers are both the most incredible and frustrating thing all at the same time, right? And so for as many times as it produces an incredible print, a lot of people who have never used them before don't realize how long they actually take to do what you want, or you don't realize the amount of finishing that goes into it enough that you're going, man, there's no such thing as like, hey, it prints something and now it's ready to go. It's like, no, you're talking like,
that's another thing. People they won't be like, all right, guys, here's day 4, like they'll be like, all right, here's the file I'm printing. And then they'll post some other stuff. And all of a sudden it's like, here's the helmet. And you didn't get anything in between. Like, I'll show you, man. Like, here's a 5-day print ready to go, or whatever. Come back in 3 days, still going, or crap, it fell over, or, because that happens. And like you said, it's when it works, it's the best thing in the world. And when it fails, you really want to throw it out a window. And that's like the regular PLA printers. The resin printers, I'm super new to resin. I got into it like a month and a half ago, almost 2 months, whatever. I got the Mars 2 Pro, and it's like, it was like if you're worried about moving parts, it has way less things to worry about. They are important things, but it's like 3 important things, and that's it. On a regular printer like what we use, you've got anything can go wrong. There's an unlimited number of things that can go wrong. But with the resin printer, it's been really nice to learn and get used to that, and it's so simple. And
I think for a lot of people who are listening they're gonna look at all these things and go, man, I can get a 3D printer for $300, Black Friday sale, whatever. What's kind of your advice for someone who's looking to get into something? Because they are incredible in terms of just making a prop out of nothing. They do, when they work, they do have that quote unquote capacity to do so.
They work.
But what kind of advice do you have for someone who's like kind of teetering between saying, I mean, obviously the 3D printers have a much bigger print build, and I think a lot of people love the idea of being able to make a helmet in one piece, right? That's a big thing that a lot of people buy the bigger beds for, is because they want to do the helmet in one piece.
That's what I did.
But the resin printers aren't big enough yet to be doing that. Well, they are, but for a consumer, they aren't there yet.
No, yeah. I wish I would have, like what I'm about to say, I wish I would have heard it a while ago. If you're on the fence about it, if you're thinking, man, should I do it? Oh, I'm not sure. Maybe I'll wait. Just do it. Because the longer you wait, the less you're going to learn, and the less you're going to be doing, the less you're going to be doing it. I did that with the 3D printer at first. I waited a year or two. People were printing stuff, and I'm like, damn, and I'd buy printed things, and, I'd work on the prints, and I'm like, man, it's in my head. I'm like, that's a lot of money. It's like, I think the CR10 was like $400 on sale. Something like that.
Sure.
384 or something. And for me at the time, because I'd never, obviously I'd bought costume stuff, whatever. But like, damn, like I'm buying this machine that I have zero knowledge of. Besides a video or two I watched on YouTube. All right, here's my debit card. Fine. And and after that, you learn everything. You figure it out. If you don't figure it out, you look it up on YouTube. You ask a friend. There's a million people that are already doing it. And same goes with the resin printer. You're like, damn, does it stink? Is it too, are the fumes gnarly? It's like, it's not that bad. Leave it by a window, put a fan on. Don't leave it in your baby's room, but you can have it in your office, have it, well ventilated. You're good to go. You don't know what to do. You look up an Uncle Jesse video, he's got unlimited knowledge. Check it out. They tell you, boom, boom, buy this, don't buy that, do this, don't do that. You're done. You're good to go.
Yeah. And I think
just do it.
And what's so kind of, I know, cause a lot of people, I'm in a space where I have a house, I've got a garage, I'm in a little bit of a unique space. And that's why I think traditionally 501st members are a little bit older, because the process of making a costume is like, if you're just working with a kit, a regular ABS kit, the trimmings and the cutting and all that kind of stuff is like, it's hard. It would be very hard for someone who's in an apartment. And I'm always impressed when people say, I made this in my apartment. I'm like, how?
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking of the dremeling, I'm thinking of the sounds, I'm thinking of all that stuff. So like, what's your workspace like?
Oh, well, I had a man cave, not a man cave, it was like an office I had, my 3D printer, I had a desk, but we had a kid about 2 years ago. So we gave the kid the room, as a responsible parent would, I guess.
Oh, I guess.
So I had to move everything into the garage, but I have a very limited space in my garage because we have just another fridge, a motorcycle. There's things just there. So I have a little cube of space, very little space. I use a lot of the outside. I have an alleyway that hits my garage, so I use that to paint. I'll put the cardboard down. I'll do some rotocasting or slush casting. And that's the space I use a lot. In the inside, it's mostly just printers, and then I'll hang stuff up if it's drying from paint, stuff like that.
Yeah. So that's super encouraging, because I think, for some people, you look at all the reasons of why I can't build a costume. I don't have space. I don't have the money. I can't justify the money. I don't have the tools, and all those things are valid, but I think it's cool to see someone, to follow along and kind of see the process of how people do that and how they make it work. I think really, if like there's a will, there's a way, in terms of saying, man, I really want to do this. I'm going to figure out how to make it happen.
I think there's one more important thing though. A lot of people will want something immediately, or they'll think it's going to be done immediately. And it's a marathon. It's not a sprint,
Right.
There's no rush if the premiere is on next week, who cares? Don't rush it, because you're going to be wearing this for however long, take your time, do your research, do your fitting, whatever. You're not competing with anyone. No one's going to be cooler for finishing first or whatever. Take your time, because there's a lot of frustrating aspects, especially with costuming. The clone stuff, for example, it's got to fit nicely and comfortably for you to walk around, no pinching, stuff like that. So There's no reason to rush it, because you're going to suffer in the end. So,
well, let's talk too about that. I think at this point, you're one of the first clones from the Bad Batch, I think, in costuming right now, I believe, right?
I was the second hunter approved in the 501st. And awesome. I'm friends with the first hunter. His kid's awesome, but we have different kids. But so 1 and 2, yeah.
That's so cool. So let me ask you this: as someone who has a couple different costumes, and I think everyone's story is unique, and whatever really like excites them about a costume, right? It's crazy at how some people breeze over one trooper and then they just completely fixate on another. And I know it's different for everybody. So when you see a character on screen, what is it about a character for you that really like gets you excited? Is it weaponry? Is it the look? Is it the vibe? Is it their personality? Like, what does a character do for you that makes you be like, man, I'm going to lose my mind over this guy?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a few things, because it's like how cool you think the thing is, I love clone trooper, looks so cool. Awesome. Or, how much you connect with a character for their personality traits or whatever, like, oh man, or like weaponry for sure. Jedi, like I love that lightsaber. I'm gonna build that costume just because I love that lightsaber. Or like I've done it. I've done a few of those, and or like aliens, for example. I love the alien costumes, but I can't afford all these crazy masks. So I pick one, maybe pick two, and just something. And I also like the uniqueness. Like if you can pick something that not a lot of people have chosen before, or like something you'd want to see. Like I've never seen an Amagandai costume. Let's do it. Something like that.
I think
that speaks to me.
It's because for the longest time I've been like, man, I obviously pretty fitting. I want to do a Hondo Onaka. I think it would be super funny. Yes. Obviously, a lot of people have expected that from me, and I'm like, oh, that would be pretty sweet. But I mean, what do you as far as do you think about the technicality of it? Yeah, I think it's really cool because I know that you follow a lot of the the actual people who design, the concept designers and the costumers of the shows. And you're in LA and there's obviously enough people around there through, 7 degrees of
Sure.
separation that you've run into some people. I mean, what do you think is like really the biggest difference between in what you've seen in the design of the costumes all the way from the original trilogy, which, if you compare them side by side, it's like, man, these original trilogy costumes are so haphazardly put together in their own beautiful way versus, man, it's like, then you have like the Death Trooper, which is just the most incredible costume that's so ornate, so detailed. Like, what do you see as the difference? Like, what's your take on some of the difference of the costumes?
I think the magic of the original trilogy was that there was a limited budget and that they used, a lot of found parts, a lot of what they could. They were using flash handles from cameras as weapons,
Right.
You name it. Now my head's drawing a blank, but they had all sorts of things that you're like, that's this, like if you look at it now, you can buy a vintage piece or a replica piece of to build whatever you want. And something I noticed from the prequels to the original trilogy is when they put their lightsabers, all of them had clips on the original trilogy, but in the sequel trilogy, they all had CoverTech wheels, just because for whatever reason. But the CoverTech seems like something more advanced, so it's like it's like the whole trilogy, the whole sequel, all the movies. I feel like they go from the future to the past in terms of technology, in a sense. For the good guys, at least, they're always struggling to keep up. But they first had great armor, great weaponry, this and that, and then the original trilogy is like scraps of what's left, and then then you get Rey, who's literally a scrapper, cleaning junk up, and so it's like I feel like it digresses over time, but it's in a good way because I love the old found part tech stuff, and the concept design stuff. I don't do any seamstress stuff. I don't sew. I should really learn how to, but I always go to outside sources for that, for instance, stuff. But the armors, everything. It's everything's an inspiration. It just everything looks the way you'd want to wear it, I feel like.
Yeah, and I love, and of course, like the updates for like even the Rogue One TK versus the original trilogy. Like, it's so cool that it's such an Easter egg for people who really care about this stuff. And I think and I don't know if you're the same way as me, but I look at Star Wars in a completely different way now since I got into this hobby, because I'm so impressed with how they do the function over fashion and how so little of it, and especially for someone like Jon Favreau, when I found out that the Dark Troopers and the Mandalorian were actually costumes, my mind was blown, right? And of course you have like your gears and the elbows are green screen and they add those in, but but in reality, it's absolutely incredible that most of Star Wars seen on screen, obviously besides the prequels, which were more a testament to what the technology was at the time, but like they're real costumes. Like, it's real. You can see them at displays, and you can actually, it's encouraging to let fans know that, you can make this with your hands and plastic the same way that somebody else got paid to do. Right. So I think, does it make you feel the same way? I mean, I don't think I'm alone in this, because I know that you and I are cut from the same cloth.
I never think it's impossible. Like you said, like I thought those Death Troopers were all CGI, and it turns out they're actual people in them. When we saw the behind the scenes photos,
right?
And I feel, and I feel like, okay, that's doable then. Like the guy's wearing the costume, it's doable. Like, nothing's impossible. I feel like there's always someone talented making a model of something, or someone sculpting something, or if you don't do it yourself, for example, like, because I don't do that either. There's very little I do. I'm a glorified painter, to be honest. But you just, man,
it's so cool. And I love, is there, if like we're talking, is there a character, like what's your favorite character design of a recent, mine, of course, like someone put me to the spot the other day and was like, what's your favorite character design? Like, what's your favorite helmet right now? And I'm like, man, I still can't get over seeing the Shore Troopers in Rogue One. Just the color scheme, really, the inspiration behind like that they were like it was, the color scheme was picked off of a fighter bomber, I think in World War II. And all of it was just Glenn Dillon absolutely knocked that one out of the park, and I still love it, even though I'm yet to build one. What about you, John? What's like a character or a costume that you just still can't get over?
Yeah, I agree with you. The Shore Trooper is beautiful. It did stand out just like the Death Trooper did um, in Rogue One. Those are both like wow. Um, but my flavor is definitely the Mandalorian, the covert style Mandos,
Yeah,
just all of that, man. I feel like I don't know about you, but I feel like that's what we've been waiting for in terms of not so much even from live action TV show or movie, just in general. Like all of
right.
that grittiness, all of the, like because we see the grit and the dirt and other original trilogy and sequel trilogy, it's all there. But man, like that Western feel, the I it leaves me at a loss for words because it's so good. I feel like that this series just opened a Pandora's box of unlimited possibilities in terms of storytelling for Star Wars, and I think they did a killer job with Mandalorian, and it couldn't have been better. I mean, couldn't have been better, honestly.
I
So, buddy.
think having that, and especially for someone who, you're someone who's building a kit that is, they're, and I think one of your kits is an Imperial surplus, right?
My clone kit was. I don't have my Phase 2 anymore, but
Okay.
it was an Imperial surplus kit,
Okay.
and it was great.
Okay. So what was really cool about that is like there was what for some people who are learning about the difference between the kits, there's a movie, there's like a realistic version, and then there's actually an animated
Yeah.
version that I think Surplus makes. And so Kevin, who owns Imperial Surplus, is so talented.
Yeah.
And for people to be able to have that choice of saying like, I want to look like the animated show, or I want to look like the actual movie from Attack of the Clones, is really a cool testament to how Star Wars attracts fans.
Yep.
And so for someone like you who's making a realistic version of a character that I hope someday we see on screen, but you obviously having Hunter, who's going to be in the Bad Batch, which comes out in a week. What is it like? Have you had any issues with something? Does something look off? Does something feel right? Do you go for that? You go for obviously understanding that you're not, an animated rigged character, and
Yeah.
and how faithful do you have to feel like you have to be to a character? Because that's what I wonder how the designers felt going from seeing Bo-Katan in the Clone Wars, then bringing her to life and making some, in my opinion, really well addressed issues to bring that costume to life and still make it feel like, okay, I could see that's the realistic version of the
Right.
costume, right?
Yeah. I feel like so that's the best part about this hobby to begin with is you can choose whatever style you relate with. If you grew up with the Clone Wars, you can do animated. If you grew up watching the prequels, you can do a movie style. It's great. But the best part, well, I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought.
We're talking going from an animated show
Okay,
where
start,
Star
yeah.
Wars, yes, and obviously like
Sorry.
and for people who are going to jump into your Instagram, you've got and you actually look like Kanan Jarrus, which I think is so awesome because we were kind of ragging on the Marvel cosplay just a little bit if you don't look like the characters, which should never deter you from building a costume.
No.
But you actually look like Kanan, and I remember seeing a photo of you from a cosplay page, and I was like, holy crap, that guy looks like Kanan Jarrus. It's amazing. And then finding out it was you, and I'm like, dude, this is awesome. But like, I think the question I'm wondering is like, how do you deal with going from an animated character to real life and making it realistic, and then making design decisions that obviously have to impact the fidelity of having a real costume?
So I feel like you have a little bit of give and take with the animated costumes. Obviously, if there's a kit, that's the way the kit is.
Right.
You can't alter it because they all look the same. But stuff like Kanan or stuff like I'm a Gonna Die, I feel like you can kind of bend the rules a little bit. Unless you're making armor, handmade armor, it's not going to look identical. Like I had to buy and also modified, bought, found things.
Right.
Like my armor for Kanan was snakebite armor that I had to like paint and add the circles and cut them up a little bit. And yeah, it's just a matter of, making it comfortable, because a lot of the stuff it looks completely exaggerated. All the animated stuff they're either very long or the body proportions are not correct. And you do what you can. For Imagandai, it was kind of a challenge because he's got these little like nostril things here, and the costume is hard to fit over on an actual mask that has that stuff compared to the show where it's like perfectly lined up.
They don't have to really worry about physics as much.
No, not at all. And so you compromise on screen accuracy and actual, wearability.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
regardless, John, it's so cool to see, what it is that you do and watching your journey of, I swear every time you work on a costume, man, I'm like, that's the best thing you've ever done.
Thank you.
And I think if you could give some, you've amassed quite a following on Instagram, and, do you feel like at some point, like there is a, some people, like you said, only like showing finished products. Some people want to maintain that level of mystery to maybe not give away too much stuff about what makes them unique or what makes them offer a service. Maybe, that's another thing. A lot of people don't like sharing their secrets because they offer a painting service or they do something. So where do you think Instagram kind of has existed in costuming, in both like for the good and for bad?
I think it's been more good than bad, because I've had this account for 4 years or 5 years or so and it's actually the beginning of my journey, because it was, I had those lights. Like the first few pictures are those lightsabers I was talking about. So, it's been cool to like grow from nothing, and you meet people and you connect and like, oh, I do this too, or I like this too. Cool. And it builds from there. It's like a tree, a flower blossoming. It's awesome. And obviously there's, the fake aspect, because on Instagram everything's really nice and everything, everyone's at their best and everyone is smiling, and obviously you want to see stuff like that, but they don't show you everything. They show you the moments they choose, which is perfectly fine. That's what it's for, basically. But I, like you said, I like to, there's the good, which is the good, and then here's the mess, and I feel like I might not post it, but every story I do is whatever happened. If it was good or bad, it's in there. You see it for the most part. If I don't know if even people care about that, to be honest, because sometimes I'll post stuff and they're like, why'd you post that? And it's like, oh, it's a mess up,
Why not?
Showing you people mess up, no big deal.
Right. Why not? It's my Instagram. I can do
whatever I want.
Once.
Like, why are you posting your mess ups? I'm like, to show you that it happens to everyone, like, it's not like everyone you see on YouTube or the big accounts that do really great, they mess up too. Like everything, paint wise, or if they have a farm of printers, like half their printers are going out half the time. They're not posting about it, but stuff happens. So why not share it?
Yeah, I completely agree. Well, it's a breath of fresh air to see it, because I feel like even as someone who has 3 costumes, like there are other costumes where I feel overwhelmed and I'm like, man, this is crazy. And also at how fast some people just dive into these costumes. And it seems like, I'm like, man, like, do you have a day job? Like, how are you working on, how are you making so much progress on this? Like, cause I'm like you, like there's times where I'm like, man, if I get to work on a costume for an hour a week, that's a good week, because some like life gets in the way. Right. So I think it's really, it's something to remind ourselves that, first of all, this is a hobby. It's not a race. The reward is being able to put it on and interact with other people. And I've personally kind of come back into the idea of, when you get into this hobby, you start getting into, ooh, this is the most accurate file. Ooh, this is the best one. And I love accuracy because someone is paying the person who designed it a tribute by saying, I wanted to nail this as faithfully as I could to replicating it. So I love that. But I think at the end of the day, though, what it is that we do with our time is make someone's day a little bit happier or make someone's day a little bit cooler, because we're sharing our love with their disbelief that they could be seeing someone from Star Wars. And I think that's, it's really cool. So what's the state of costuming in Southern California? You guys obviously have one of the largest garrisons in the entire 501st. So like what's your community like down there?
It's a lot of fun, a lot of great people. I feel like there's almost no one that, there's always a bad apple here and there, but everyone's cool. We all know each other. A lot of people have been there for almost 20 years. Some people have been there a long time. So
incredible.
Yeah, it's cool. And so everyone's really nice. I haven't had any real issues with people out here.
I love that. Well, and I think that's what's important, because if you find a community that supports how ridiculous this hobby is, those are your people. Those are your people that hold you up, and you go, you're like, am I crazy? And everyone else who's crazy goes,
they're like, we're all crazy. Yeah.
We're all crazy. We're here. So I think that's awesome, man. So John, let's do a lightning round while we wrap this thing up, because I know I'm interested in hearing your take on it. So try and answer your questions as quick as you can, because I know that people are going to want to know. So let's hit that lightning round. Okay. Who is your favorite character design in Star Wars?
Man.
I'm pressing you, I know.
As of now, it's the Mandalorian, the whole Mandalorian costume design that's going on between the main character and the covert Mandos, Paz Vizsla, all of them. Love it. All
right, you're fully Mando.
Yeah.
Let's say cost is no objective. Someone gives you $10,000 and says, John, build it. What do you build?
Man, 10,000? Is it costume or anything?
Are we getting technical over this? This is great.
In my head, I thought ATST for some reason. I don't know why.
A fully functional one. Yeah, that's right.
Well, I don't know. 10 grand is probably not enough, but looking.
Let's say 10 grand for costume. Oh man, okay, costume. That's good. I like that. Costume.
Hold on. Maybe Star Killer from Force Unleashed 1 or 2, like one of the gnarly ones.
Ah, Man of Culture. I see,
soccer
John.
Style, maybe. I don't know.
I love
like that.
All right, so Star Killer. That's a deep cut. I like that. Who do you think? This one might get you in trouble. Who has better designs, the good guys or the bad guys?
I think the good guys have better designs, personally. And that's no.
Ships,
I love the
costumes.
Ships, love the costumes. I just like that they're all half put together. The ships are taped together most of the time, and I do love the bad guy costumes, but they're too clean. I like the weathered, worn in, battled in, sweated in look.
All right, that's it. A rebellion built on hope and by Phillips Head Screws. All right, John, you get to pilot one ship in Star Wars. What do you choose?
If it's not the Outrider, then an A-wing.
Dude, you are deep on this on the video games, man. I love that.
Little Outrider right here, just hanging out.
So you can't see this, but John just pulled out the Outrider, just had it sitting there. He was ready. That's good. That's awesome. So, and then you said an A-wing. All right. So you're an A-wing, which you know what is kind of it's a little bit of a deep cut. Obviously, so often overlooked by the X-wing.
Yeah, the X-wing's cool.
The A-wing is a sweet little ship, man.
I love the A-wing. I like the Y-wing a lot too. The designs of the Rebel ships are so good. The B-wing's awesome. It just looks so cool. I wouldn't fly one because they're not very quick, I guess, but they just look so cool.
Yeah.
The X-wing's cool, I guess. I just love the A-wing. The A-wing's awesome.
Respect, man. Well, John, thanks for spending time with us, man. I appreciate you coming on and doing this and helping us get this podcast started. It's been so cool connecting with other people through not only through Hondo Supply, but obviously we're all kind of in that same crew, man. We're all a little crazy about Star Wars, and our obsession of bringing Star Wars to life has really made a pretty incredible community. And I'm excited to connect with people like you. And what do you have coming up? Like, do you have any other builds planned, or we're all roads lead to Celebration 2022, man. Brother. So what are we doing?
Well, I'm printing a bunch of stuff that I haven't started working on yet. I have the tank trooper from the Mandalorian. I have all the armor printed. I have all the soft parts. I just have to get to work.
So the tank trooper is in what people are calling the Bill Burr episode, where
Yes.
they're bringing the Tabana to the refinery, and it is a mud trooper body from Solo with the hover tank pilot from Rogue One, just colored a little bit of a different color. So that's
Correct.
the kit you're going for.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm loving the aesthetic of the show. I like that it can be, I can still do a bad guy costume. I have my Mando costume that's post-Imperial. I'd consider it a good guy, I guess. So I just want to cover a bit of that because it's just, I'm loving it. I want to eat it up. So good.
Well, let's talk about this too. Before we go, you're also kicking off a YouTube series probably in the next couple of weeks here. And tell me about that.
Yeah. So I'm doing I guess it's a YouTube series that's going to be called Maker's Choice, and it's going to be basically me reviewing products and services from people. So if I always buy helmets, or I'll print a helmet file or something. I always do that anyway, so I might as well review it. So in case someone else wants to, they're on the fence about buying something, they can say, "Oh, this guy liked it," or "He didn't," or whatever. So it's going to be a lot of that, mostly prop services. Sorry, prop makers, different prop makers,
Sure.
products and services like lightsaber installs, stuff like that.
And I think for people who are kind of hovering around the idea of building a costume, traditionally what we would say in the costuming clubs is to, you join the forums, and that's kind of been like a blanket statement. Join the forums, start reading for the next 6 years of your life.
I hate that.
Right. And I'm like, and I get it, because what they're trying to do is they're trying to tell people not to get burned by someone who is
by some shady
3D printing company or something, right? So I think it's going to be really great for people who are overwhelmed by the amount of information in a late 90s designed old school forum, which a lot of the costuming clubs are based in, right? But I think it's going to be really cool to kind of see reviews that are both put to the test by you, but then also like authentically really digested in terms of saying, I'm not, it's very easy for people to be wowed taking something out of the box and going, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. But once you start working with it, you start to notice the things that are maybe not as awesome or maybe even better than you thought. So I think it's a great opportunity for people who are considering getting into costuming. Boom, here's this 5-minute review from this guy that I obviously follow his stuff. I trust him. I think it's going to be awesome. Yeah,
that's what I'm hoping for. It's mostly just to share information, and I'm just one person, my opinion is not gold. You can take it for what it's worth. But yeah, I want to review a lot of stuff that people often buy, that often want to buy, that I've already bought, or even a product that they're thinking of using, like, well, I've used it a few times. It works this way or that, and I've gotten a lot of people asking, like, can you make a video? Do you have a YouTube? And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to do it just because like I said, I already do this stuff. I might as well just put a camera on and talk to it. And this is what I'm doing, whatever.
Right.
It's
awesome.
It's going to be fun. Should be good.
Cool. So it's called Maker's Choice.
Maker's Choice, yeah. So because I feel like makers buy props, but they have a choice what they buy.
Yes.
So.
Yes, absolutely. So Maker's Choice is going to be coming out. We'll definitely share that on our channels because obviously, John, we're a huge supporter of you and appreciate all that we've grown to appreciate about each other and our humor. And I truly am excited for this community because as we grow together and as we learn from each other, you're definitely someone who I look at and say, man, I know that he's had some tips or tricks of how to get around some of these problems. So I appreciate you on a friendship level. So Maker's Choice is going to be a series that's going to come out. We'll definitely share that on our social. John, where can people find you on the socials?
Alpha Ignition on Instagram, on Twitter, Facebook. I don't use it much, but it's there.
Sure.
And YouTube will also be. It's already there, Alpha Ignition. But haven't made the series yet, but we're getting there.
Awesome, man. Well, John, I appreciate your time.
I just wanted to say thanks. I love this. You're a great dude, and I wish you a lot of success with this podcast. Because
hey man, we'll see you on the interwebs. We'll be doing this. We'll be geeking out over Bad Batch as it comes out. So thanks again.
Yeah.
And and if people want to reach out to you, I know you're super active on social too. So definitely interact with John. Give him a follow. It's a great account to follow, Alpha Ignition. So my friend, see you on the other side. Keep it sticky, keep it wet, painted, clear coated, whatever you got to do, man. I appreciate you. Thanks for being on the show.
Dry's nice. Thank you, man.
All right,
appreciate it.
Well, and look at that. Our first episode of Armor Party has come to a close. Thank you so much for listening. I really hope you enjoyed this conversation and look forward to many more. Again, I am your host, Mike Forster. We'll be dropping new episodes of Armor Party every other Tuesday. Armor Party is also a part of the Thank the Maker network. Thank the Maker is 3 friends from the music industry that were in some pretty popular bands that got together to share their love of all things Star Wars. And we decided that we wanted to just keep bringing more content to fans like you and us. So what we're going to do is share, be social, interact with each other, and kick off a network of series that are going to be super entertaining if you are a fan of all things Star Wars. Thank you again for listening. We hope you enjoy the show. Find us on social media, on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. And always remember, being an adult is boring, and Star Wars is forever.
Everything is proceeding as I have foreseen.